Imagine having so much wealth that wherever you traveled, gold became less valuable. Imagine leading a caravan so large that people struggled to count everyone in it. Thousands of soldiers, thousands of servants, hundreds of camels, each carrying enormous amounts of gold across the Sahara Desert. Kings welcomed you, scholars admired you, merchants spoke of you for generations. And when your journey ended, the world would never forget your name. This was Mansa Musa, the ruler of the Mali Empire, a man whose extraordinary wealth became legendary, but whose greatest achievement was not the riches he possessed. It was the civilization he helped build. He transformed cities into centers of learning, encouraged trade across continents, supported education, architecture, and culture. More than 700 years later, historians continue to study his remarkable reign. Many still consider him the richest person in recorded history. But before he became a legend, before the world knew his name, he was simply a young prince growing up in one of Africa's greatest kingdoms. This is his story. Long before the world called him Mansa Musa, he was simply a young prince growing up in one of the most remarkable kingdoms of medieval Africa. The Mali Empire stretched across vast lands in West Africa, controlling important trade routes that connected the continent to North Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. Rich deposits of gold and thriving markets made the empire one of the wealthiest and most influential powers of its time. It was into this world that Musa was born, around the year 1280. Although historians know relatively little about his early childhood, it is believed that he was raised within the royal family and prepared from a young age for the responsibilities of leadership. As a prince, Musa would have learned the importance of justice, diplomacy, and governing a diverse empire. He also witnessed firsthand how trade, agriculture, and cooperation helped strengthen the kingdom and improve the lives of its people. Surrounded by experienced advisors and respected leaders, the young prince grew into a thoughtful and capable man. No one could have imagined that this quiet royal would one day become the ruler of an empire, or that his name would become synonymous with extraordinary wealth and lasting legacy. The journey of Mansa Musa had only just begun. In the early 14th century, the Mali Empire stood at the height of its power. Its influence stretched across vast regions of West Africa, connecting prosperous cities, thriving markets, and some of the world's richest gold fields. At the time, the empire was ruled by Mansa Abubakar II, a king remembered in tradition for his deep curiosity about the world beyond the Atlantic Ocean. According to historical accounts recorded by later Arab historians, Abubakar II organized a great expedition to explore what lay beyond the western horizon. Hundreds of ships were prepared for the journey. When the first expedition failed to return, he reportedly assembled an even larger fleet and chose to lead it himself. Before departing, he entrusted the responsibilities of the empire to Prince Musa. The king sailed west and was never seen again. With the ruler gone and no sign of his return, Musa was crowned Mansa, the Emperor of Mali. It was an enormous responsibility. He had inherited one of the largest and wealthiest empires in the world. The decisions he made would shape not only the future of Mali, but the course of African history itself. The young prince had become a king, and his greatest chapter was about to begin. As Mansa Musa settled into his new role as emperor, he inherited far more than a throne. He inherited one of the largest and most prosperous empires on earth. The Mali Empire stretched across vast regions of West Africa, encompassing important cities, fertile farmland, and thriving trade routes that connected Africa to North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. At the heart of its prosperity was gold. During Mansa Musa's reign, Mali controlled a significant share of the world's known gold production. Merchants traveled great distances in search of its riches, while caravans crossed the Sahara carrying gold, salt, ivory, textiles, and other valuable goods. But Mansa Musa understood that an empire's true strength was not measured by wealth alone. It was measured by how well it was governed. He worked to strengthen trade, maintain stability, and encourage cooperation among the diverse peoples living throughout his empire. Under his leadership, cities flourished, markets grew busier, and Mali became known not only for its riches, but for its order, prosperity, and influence. The empire had become the jewel of West Africa, and soon, the world would discover just how extraordinary its emperor truly was. In 1324, Mansa Musa embarked on a journey that would make his name known across the medieval world. As a devoted Muslim, he set out on the Hajj, the sacred pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca. But this was no ordinary journey. Traveling across the vast Sahara Desert, Mansa Musa was accompanied by an enormous caravan that amazed everyone who witnessed it. Historical accounts describe thousands of attendants, soldiers, servants, and merchants traveling alongside him, with camels carrying large quantities of gold and supplies for the long expedition. As the caravan passed through cities in North Africa and Egypt, people gathered simply to witness its arrival. The wealth of the Mali Empire was on full display. Mansa Musa generously gave gifts to the poor, supported local communities, and presented gold to scholars, leaders, and those he met along the way. His kindness and generosity earned admiration wherever he traveled. But his extraordinary wealth also left an unexpected mark on history. The gold distributed during his journey was so abundant that it affected local markets in places such as Cairo, becoming one of the most famous examples of how a single ruler's generosity influenced an economy. By the time Mansa Musa reached Mecca, he was no longer known only as the ruler of Mali. He had become a legend whose name echoed across continents. By the time Mansa Musa returned to the Mali Empire, his pilgrimage had become the subject of conversations across the medieval world. Travelers wrote about him. Merchants shared stories of his generosity. Scholars recorded accounts of his remarkable journey. Even European mapmakers began placing the king of Mali on their maps, often illustrating him seated upon a golden throne, holding a large piece of gold in his hand, a powerful symbol of the immense wealth associated with his empire. So, was Mansa Musa truly the richest man in history? Many modern historians believe he was. While it is impossible to calculate his fortune by today's standards, the vast gold resources controlled by the Mali Empire, combined with its thriving trade network, made his wealth unlike anything the medieval world had ever witnessed. But Mansa Musa understood something many rulers never did. True greatness was not measured simply by how much wealth a person possessed. It was measured by how that wealth was used. Rather than keeping his riches hidden away, he invested in his people, strengthened his empire, and laid the foundation for a legacy that would outlast his lifetime. His greatest contribution was still to come. When Mansa Musa returned from his pilgrimage to Mecca, he brought back more than memories of a remarkable journey. He returned with new ideas, new knowledge, and a vision for the future of the Mali Empire. Rather than spending his wealth on luxury alone, Mansa Musa invested in something far more lasting: education. He supported the construction of magnificent mosques, schools, and public buildings throughout his empire, especially in the city of Timbuktu. One of the most famous was the Jingerebe Mosque, built with the help of the Andalusian architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, whom Mansa Musa is traditionally said to have invited to Mali after his pilgrimage. Under his leadership, Timbuktu grew into one of the world's great centers of learning. Students and scholars traveled from across Africa and the Islamic world to study subjects such as mathematics, astronomy, law, medicine, theology, and literature. Its libraries preserved thousands of handwritten manuscripts, many of which continue to be studied today. Mansa Musa understood that gold could build an empire, but knowledge could sustain it for generations. And that may have been the greatest investment he ever made. As the years passed, Mansa Musa continued to guide the Mali Empire through a period of remarkable prosperity. The trade routes remained busy, the cities continued to flourish, and the reputation of Mali stretched far beyond the borders of West Africa. Merchants, scholars, and travelers carried stories of the empire to distant lands, describing a kingdom unlike any they had seen before. Although the historical record preserves only limited details about Mansa Musa's final years, historians believe he died around 1337, after ruling for approximately 25 years. He left behind an empire that was stronger, wealthier, and more influential than when he first became its ruler. His successors inherited a kingdom respected across Africa and the wider Islamic world. Yet Mansa Musa's greatest gift was not the gold he left behind. It was the foundation he built, a foundation of trade, learning, faith, and opportunity. His reign had transformed the Mali Empire into one of the greatest civilizations of the medieval world. Though the king's life had come to an end, his influence was only beginning. Mansa Musa had been gone for centuries, but his name continued to travel. Stories of the wealthy ruler of Mali spread across North Africa, the Middle East, and eventually Europe. Travelers and scholars recorded accounts of the extraordinary empire in West Africa, but perhaps the most remarkable evidence of Mansa Musa's reputation appeared on medieval maps. In 1375, the famous Catalan Atlas depicted the ruler of Mali seated upon a golden throne, holding a large golden object in his hand. The image was more than an illustration. It showed that the ruler of Mali had become known far beyond Africa to people who had never seen the empire. Mansa Musa had become a symbol of unimaginable wealth. But the mapmakers were revealing something else. They were showing Europe that West Africa was not an unknown, empty land. It was home to powerful kingdoms, wealthy cities, international trade, and rulers whose influence stretched across continents. Centuries later, Mansa Musa's name still appears in history books, documentaries, classrooms, and conversations about the wealthiest people who ever lived. His empire eventually declined. His cities changed. But the story of the king who carried Mali's gold into the wider world never disappeared. And that is why, more than 700 years later, the world still remembers Mansa Musa. For centuries, people have remembered Mansa Musa for one thing above all else, his extraordinary wealth. But gold was only one part of his story. Mansa Musa ruled an empire where trade connected distant regions, where merchants moved across the Sahara, and where cities became centers of commerce, religion, and scholarship. He helped strengthen Mali's position in the wider Islamic world. He supported the construction of mosques and public buildings. He encouraged scholarship and education. And through his famous pilgrimage, he brought the Mali Empire to the attention of people far beyond West Africa. His wealth may have made him famous, but his vision made him important. Because gold eventually changes hands, buildings eventually age, kings eventually disappear. But knowledge, culture, and the institutions a leader helps create can survive for generations. That is the part of Mansa Musa's story that deserves to be remembered. He wasn't simply a man who possessed enormous wealth. He was a ruler who used the resources of his empire to strengthen his civilization. And more than 700 years later, his name still reminds the world that one of Africa's greatest empires once stood at the center of global history. Mansa Musa's name became famous because of gold. But gold is not what made his story extraordinary. He inherited a powerful empire and transformed it into one of the most influential civilizations of medieval Africa. He strengthened trade, supported education, encouraged scholarship, built mosques and centers of learning, and through his famous pilgrimage, he introduced the Mali Empire to people across the wider world. Centuries later, the exact value of his wealth may be impossible to calculate. But perhaps that is the point, because the greatest measure of Mansa Musa's life was never how much gold he possessed. It was what he left behind: a stronger Mali, a thriving center of knowledge, a legacy that crossed borders and survived centuries. From the goldfields of West Africa to the markets of Cairo to the holy city of Mecca, Mansa Musa's journey connected Africa to a much larger world. And today, more than 700 years later, his name still commands attention. Not simply because he was one of the wealthiest rulers in history, but because he proved that wealth, when combined with vision, can shape civilizations. Mansa Musa was more than the richest man in history. He was a king whose legacy outlived his fortune. Thank you for watching, and thank you to TXA Studios for bringing this remarkable story to life.